A lot of fuss and big fanfare, but we did convince her that this was an 80-year career almost, or 80 years of engagement, and 80 years of engaging with art from the very beginning. So we felt that we needed to, well, we wanted to honour that in a few words. So I'll have a bit of a yarn, and then I'll hand over to Krista and take the mic back. And if anybody else wants to make any comments or anecdotes, please just, come over and grab the mic, and we'll continue yarning. But first, I'd just like to acknowledge that TMAG is on the country of the Murwina people who did not survive British colonisation, and I pay my respects to the Tasmanian Aboriginal community. I honour the Aboriginal elders, past and present, and value their history, culture and strength of the Tasmanian Aboriginal community. Jan has been a TMAG employee since 1995. And so it's been a lengthy time with us here, but many of you hopefully know, and some of you may not, that Jan had a whole career preceding that as an art educator within the education department environment. So I'll just say a few words about that part of Jan's life, and there were some guests who couldn't make it today from that time. But we'd also just like to, just remember what it was like for those years. So Jan started teaching Kings Meadows, 1961. So that was the sort of era when this was an anecdote that was quite fun. So if you were a woman and you got pregnant and you started to show, you had to resign. But because Jan was her regular dress costume was a smock in the art department, she could manage to hide that show a little bit longer. So there were benefits in being in the art department, even in that era. But it is kind of worth remembering what that era was like. So Kings Meadows up in Launceston was I don't think it was a very conservative or not conservative school, Jan, but you did remark the other day that a teacher was sent home for wearing a skirt. She had to go and get slacks on. Was it that way? Was it the other way around? I'm of an era where this stuff was, really? So what was it? She came in a dress and was revealing her legs.
She had lovely suntanned legs, and they were bare. She didn't wear stockings, and she was sent home to, this is in 1961 or 2 or something like that, and she was not allowed to have bare legs in the school, and that was pretty common. That was when we used to have school inspectors. Some of you will remember it, called Killer Brown and Basher something or other else, who were inspecting the teachers.
Yeah, not the students, the teachers. So, that era, luckily, thankfully, I think is well and truly gone. But then the next school Jan went to was Clarence High over the river, which is something we shared. I taught there 30 years sometime later, but not in the art department. Clarence High, but then Hobart Matric, where you spent a reasonably long period of time. And that was before, it was Hobart College up the hill there.
About 5 years.
5 years at Hobart Matric, yeah. So again, Jan reflected when we were having a yarn last week about the kids at Hobart Matric, and you were commenting that they were just very conservative. You were railing against their conservatism, and again, the anecdote was that when you came back from morning tea or something, the kids had ripped up newspapers and divided the classroom into some sort of left and right. Now, I wasn't sure whether that was left and right brain or left and right politics or just taking the piss out of you, I'm not sure. So, Jan, even from then, was trying to encourage people to think a bit more creatively and to sort of step out of the constraints that maybe formal education was suffering at that time. And then, of course, Rosny. And Rosny from 1977 till 1994 was where you really felt you landed. Again, Jan was saying that Rosny was not then seen as the sort of the plum art job. Hobart Matric was more officious perhaps, but in fact it was the best decision, you were saying, because of... Yeah, okay. So in 72 or 5 after the bridge went down, and then, So that whole life of being a teacher at Rosny, I think was where you were saying you really did get into your stride as an art teacher. Yeah. And I'm just trying to reflect on some of the people that you taught there. So people like Patrick Hall, Belinda Winkler, Belinda Hall, Richard Wastrel. You know, these are the artists that we know today, and Jan taught all these folk. So again, I think we see the evidence of Jan's effort on the walls of the galleries. You know, which is often, well, it's not something that you see when you're a teacher of other disciplines. So that's fantastic that an art teacher can have that. And again, I think you reflected about Patrick in particular as being a very special type of student, Patrick Hall. And to quote you, that kid must be an old soul. How can he know that stuff at 17? Was what Jan was saying back to the staff room all those years ago. And those relationships have continued all the way through to today. And when we had that Patrick Hall show a couple of years ago, I remember the kind of the interchange between you and him. It was beautiful to see. Yeah. And then, of course, after Rosny in 1994, Jan retired. Now that retirement was not very successful. So after 33 years as a teacher, she walked out the door, and I think you were saying almost that weekend there was some sort of note or advertisement in the Mercury for TMAG seeking volunteer art guides. And that was at the beginning of what exhibition was that, Jan? Arthur Boyd. And really that's sort of where Krista steps in, because Krista was the art curator at the time, and initiated that volunteer art guides program. So Krista, would you like to say a few words around that?
Yeah. Now, can you hear? Yes, you can hear me. I'm not comfortable with the sound. Can you hear me the sound? No.
Sorry.
Okay, a little bit of history from me too, but a different kind of history. The first time we actually had art guides at the Tasmanian Museum and Art Gallery was in 1987, 1988, when we were expecting our bicentenary art exhibition, or when we were producing our bicentenary art exhibition, Tasmanian Vision. And I had, shortly before then, arrived in Tasmania, and I thought it would be a great idea if I could train some art guides for that exhibition. I did so, and the program was extremely successful, but at the end of the program we let the guides disperse. Nevertheless, I always thought that one day I would like to do some art guide training again, and not just for a special exhibition, but also somebody that would take the program forward into the future and include other exhibitions, but also very much our very important, great permanent collection. And the opportunity to do that arrived some years later, as Charlie already said, in 1994, when we were expecting the Arthur Boyd retrospective from the Art Gallery of New South Wales. And so I thought about it, and I thought, right, I would really like to train guides again. The only problem was I was already semi-retired, and I was about to retire completely. And I knew I wasn't going to be there to lead a group into the future. Nevertheless, we set up the old Bond store as a training center. I SOS'd Barry Pierce at the Art Gallery of New South Wales to please lend us all the slides of the works that were in the exhibition, and we advertised for volunteers. And we got this wonderful bunch of bushy-tailed people that arrived, who most of them were retirees, and many of them very recent retirees, Jan. And most of them came from the arts and the humanities, and all of them were very, very committed to do something for art. And so one of these people that arrived for this program was Jan. And it didn't take me very long to realize that she would be the perfect person to take the program forward. Because, as Charlie has already said, she had done an awful lot of art teaching, both theory and practice, for many years at the college level. She is a painter herself, and she believed very firmly in the importance our permanent collection was, and she also believed that young and old could be reached and their lives could be expanded through an interaction with art. So I talked to Jan. I said, would you be interested? And Jan said, yes. I said, would you be interested? And then if I actually proposed that you take over for me to Pat Saban, who was now director. And Jan said, okay. So I talked to Pat, and she said yes. And Jan and I exchanged roles. I became a volunteer art guide, and Jan became our leader. And that was 26 years ago. So, since then, I think art guiding, now first of all, I must say I always thought that was one of the greatest decisions for this art galleries that Pat ever made. Because I think Jan's commitment and Jan's constant support of this institution has been absolutely unimaginably fantastic. And for such a long time, it is really something to celebrate. And we took to Jan very rapidly. We always respected her very much, and she respected us for our knowledge and for our experience. And I guess together we engaged on this journey, or we took off on this journey. Now, I think that art guiding over the years, with Jan at the helm, already has become more challenging. And part of the challenge is that in those early days, we used to get very large exhibitions like the Arthur Boyd from major sister institutions here. And they were relatively easy to get one's teeth in. And that has pretty well dried up. And the exhibitions that we could mount ourselves were by necessity limited. So a Patrick Hall or now a David Keeling doesn't happen all that often. So in between times, you sometimes have small groups of pictures or other objects of art, and you may not feel completely convinced or completely believe in the quality of what you're looking at. And yet, it is there, and so you have to do something with it. But Jan always said, never mind, you use your critical judgment, that's fine, whatever you think, but never mind, remember what you're here for. You're here to promote absolutely everything that you find on our walls or that you find in our spaces, because that is your job. And if you cannot reach the artwork in ways that maybe looks obvious to you to start with, if you cannot cope with the structure of it, find another way. If you look at the painting, draw people's attention to the fantastic, luscious color, or talk about the particular lines in the drawings that interact with each other, or with the spaces. You have to be here, and you have to be able to address everything, because you are the face of the gallery to the public. And another thing Jan always said, you have to be flexible. Flexibility is the most important thing. So you have gone home and you have made this wonderful preparation for a wonderful tour that you're going to give with all the questions to your wonderful audience that's going to come and be really interested. Well, you arrive at the gallery, and unfortunately there are two people, or maybe one, or maybe no one. But with two or one people, be flexible. So you have to prepare it, let it go. Have a wonderful conversation about the artwork. try to find something about it that you can both agree on and that you can both pull out, and the people with whom you have talked will go off and they will say, we've had another wonderful experience and we can hand it on to our, I don't know, could be friends or children or whatever. And when we talk about no people, as fewer people maybe have arrived at the tours, Jan always said, well, I said we had to be flexible. Therefore, let us put our heads together and let us dream up some other programs that will be for the promotion of the gallery. And out of that were born programs such as, what is the one that, I have a senior moment, I'm allowed, I'm older than Jan. Participate grew out of that, and U3A grew out of that, and U3A has been, they both have now been running for years, haven't they? And U3A is actually the program, first of all, it attracts mostly older people, of course, mostly retirees that really want to stay with it. But since this museum is very pro-children now, remember, these older people also have lots of grandchildren whom they babysit during the holidays particularly. And if they can be turned on to a program, surely they're going to turn on all the kids that are coming with them. So that program has now run for years, and it runs, 10 sessions per term, and there are 3 terms a year. And this has now been running for years, so it has involved lots and lots of different art guides to do the programs for it. And Jan has obviously organized it all, and Jan has always been there. She's been there for putting up, helping to put up whatever needed to be put up, like tables and so on, and working like a slave, and she's always been backdrop. If something went wrong with somebody, or somebody couldn't do something, Jan would step in, no matter what her personal circumstances. And that, again, is an absolutely unbelievable quality for a leader. And finally, when we are talking about the difficulty of sometimes guiding, is that for whatever reason, hangs now seem to be, first of all, the permanent spaces in which art gallery and art objects could be replaced, could always be placed and would always be on view, have contracted in recent years in relationship to what it used to be. So there was much more gallery space for art, like the whole bottom floor, for example, plus the Colonial Gallery. That is no longer so. So only a certain amount of the collection can be shown. And not only is it hard to keep people really excited, especially local people, if they see the same thing over and over again, because sometimes these hangs are not on the walls for weeks or months, they're actually on the walls for years. And that actually can come to the detriment of other really important parts of the collection. So when Jen has gone out and to the powers that be has said, can't we have just one great painting somewhere that is not related to whatever the hang is, or 2 in comparison? Like, where is our great Peter Booth? Where is our Roger Kemp? Because they both present the belief systems of these 2 artists in just some corner of this place, of this large institution, so that we can have always something new and something different that we can talk about to our public. And or also, I think more recently, we've all said, couldn't we have some sculpture? I think the community in Hobart could be forgiven to think we don't own any, because it hasn't been out for such a very long time. And I think, for example, about the tremendous work, 2 works by Robert Klippel that we have, and the collection of the, what you call them, the maquettes that were given to us by William Richmond, Olive Richmond's wife. And he was, of course, a very close friend to Klippel, and Klippel is arguably the greatest sculptor of Australia, and Richmond was his close friend, and Klippel actually promoted Richmond in Australia. And we have those works, and along, if you wanted to add 3 people in, what about Clifford Glass? Again, we were given a very good work of his, and these 3 artists, by the way, were very good friends. And why couldn't we sometimes have incorporated in a show even just 3 sculptures? Because it's wonderful to guide people, both adults and children, through sculpture, because they can feel the works through their bodies. And they can really relate to these spaces and volumes that are being presented in them. And they are different enough, and yet similar enough in terms of the time period in which they were created to talk about. And when Jen asked for those things in meetings, it wasn't in order to entertain us or because we wanted to see these works. We were besides the point in many ways at that point. We wanted to be there to interpret these works, to hand them on, to leave people be really excited about what there was always something new to see and something different to see for the people of Tasmania, not just for visitors, because they own the collection. So those are just a few thoughts that I wanted to put out for you to consider. And rather than running on, my mouth is getting dry anyways, and I'm about to start a coughing fit, which I do quite frequently. So, just in closing, I want to say, besides whatever else one may think, we've had an absolutely wonderful time with Jan, and I'm extremely happy that she is going to stay as part of the guides, and all the crappy work, bureaucratic work, will be taken over by somebody else. I do wish them great luck, because she has some shoes to fill that are like boats, and not just like shoes. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Krista. I'll just fill in a few little bits that I think are also very notable of Jan's time as the coordinator of the Art Volunteers, and that includes some of the work that I certainly witnessed that was very kind of an offering not just to the art community but to the wider issues that are going on at the time, and they were all of the art aid programs that many of you might remember. You know, there was the tsunami aid, there was the bushfire aid, there was the flood aid. This was programs that Jan initiated a lot of work to bring in the artworks, to then raise money, to then send to these communities that were suffering in those, you know, terrible natural disasters that occurred through those. And they were, you know, big shows down in the basement of the Bonsall, or in the Bonsall, and notable in the offering that you gave there. Krista's mentioned those things like Participate in the Live Art at TMAG and the U3A. All programs initiated by Jan and still running, you know, flourishing across all those years. I remember when, because Jan and I shared an office for many years, and often she'd come in with those type of ideas and thoughts that Krista was mentioning about other artworks that should be out there or could be out there, but also new ways of looking at the material that was there. And when we had the redevelopment with the large sculpture in the centre here, and we're trying to find ways, or Jan was sharing ways of trying to thematically enter into that new hang that was there in 2013 with all of the redevelopment, and she came up with this TMAG BITES, B-I-T-E-S, and the BITES stood for Beauty, Innovation, Transience, Ethics and Survival.
They were TMAG.
Yeah.
We
and
rearranged the order.
Yeah, and that sort of way of entering into those artworks was a tool, again, she offered back to the guides to be able to explain the artwork, and moving from a didactic kind of approach that perhaps traditionally art educators, art teachers, us teachers can sometimes get into didactic modes. She very much started the conversations with the visitors and the engagement of the visitors who valued their observations and their insights, and fostered that feeling of interaction with the works that were presented here at TMAC. So I think that was a real way of helping some of the programming shift over the years, which it will always do. And again, I'm sure when Veronica picks up the mantle and works with the team again, there'll be other shifts. And it'll be great to watch. I would just like to note two people that also Jan mentioned to me who were great enablers of her career. One was Brian Hortle at Rosny, when Jan was there as a teacher. And the other I'll credit to Bill Bleethman. Jan will credit to Bill Bleethman, and I have observed that, as another enabler, people who really aided in new ideas coming forward and new things being done. And Jan was very grateful to work with those people, and Bill in particular here now. That's probably enough said by me. I think it has been a long career, an illustrious career, one we can all be very proud of. And you know, it's not necessarily that Jan's name is up in lights, but I've kind of said that there's thousands of people out there who have been affected by the way Jan has worked over the years as a teacher, as an educator here, as a person with the real sense that art can contribute enormously to our lives. And she was saying just the other day, post-COVID, or as we come out of the COVID thing, art is going to be particularly important in the way people can regain their sense of belonging to here and to community and to each other and to the land. So, Jan, I don't know if you want to say any words or
Just briefly, there are a couple of things I'd quite like to say. I have had the luckiest career in Tasmanian art history, I am sure, absolutely convinced. But what I've been able to do, if I've done anything useful at TMAC, it's only because of the quality of the group of guides here. I don't think anybody appreciates how amazing they are, especially considering our experiences that we've had in other galleries around the country. I don't think anybody can come near us. And we've had a different kind of training because they come to us trained. I used to just lie and wait for people to retire from teaching, just headhunt them, really. Because we found out early on, although we would like to have had a lot of younger people, people coming out of art school, and we did quite often, but they would soon get jobs and leave. So the only reliable people are always going to be retirees. And we're just so lucky to have had this group of absolutely stunning people who were already, lecturers at tertiary institutions and pretty nearly all teachers or librarians or just amazing, really. So anything I've been able to do is only because of this group of people. They are stunning. And it's really nice to see everybody here. Thank you so much. See Sue over there. I taught Sue in my first year at Hobart Matric when I was really conned to go back teaching, and I was one jump ahead of the sheriff really with the kids, and it was pretty terrifying. And you were in that class, yeah. So, but I've just been so lucky, really, too. And to all the people who've gotten me through this year, thank you. It's been amazing. I think I might survive it after all. But Andy's right, I do think when we get out of COVID, if we get out of COVID, it's going to be so crucial to be offering prac programs in particular, I think, because they teach people to be good viewers and therefore good consumers of places like this. But to be doing something creative is the way people will get out of mental health problems. And I think we've just got to do it as soon as we possibly can. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for coming, and thank you for being my friends.
Thank you, Jan.
And thank you for letting me invite my kids.
Well, of course. Thank you for loaning us your mother for 30, 40, 60 years. We have a gift. We have a gift that the staff have put together, and so we've got it here, Jan. You'll have to swivel around. Jane, do you want to say anything, or should we just do a grand unveiling?
Grand unveiling.
Grand unveiling. So this is a card, and read it later when you've got quiet times.
I would like to say thank you. That's all I need to say. Thank you. I admire you a lot, and thanks.
Thank you, I admire you too. Especially as you haven't had it as easy as Krista did back in those halcyon days. But
thank you, and thank you to the guides, and you led them beautifully. And
They're a pretty good group. We've got to hang on to them. We've got to work out how to hang on to them.
Veronica will be fantastic. But yeah, you bring what we do to life. So thank you. All right.
Okay, so here we go. Here's a gift from T-Mag for you, Jan.
That wasn't very professionally done, was it?
Oh, I love it.
So this was an interesting exercise here, and there was a considerable amount of lobbying to prevent Lucian from rubbing out this drawing, including emails to me, thanks Penny. But we were very fortunate in Lucian allowing us to reproduce this singular photograph of this beautiful drawing that was done as part of Extinction Studies.
Only for you.
Yeah, it's a one-off only. This is an ephemeral artwork, so this is all you get to see, and then we get to take it away. But it is a significant moment in your time, and hopefully it can hang nicely on your wall.
Thank you.
If there's anybody else who would like to say any words or offer up any reflections, please either project your voice because you're all educators, but certainly we're leaving the gallery open, the David Keeling open for a bit longer for the staff here if you want to go and, all of us, go and have a look in a quiet moment, and there is still a considerable amount of food there too. But Jan, it's huge. Thank you.
Thank you.
Depth of my heart.
We're not very good.